name is Jack, and I'm here to introduce you to the Bob. Actually, after months of work and repairs, the Bob is not so much a bucket of bolts. In this episode of MonicaandJack.com, we are recounting our RV trip during August to September of 2019 from Austin to Seattle up through the Rocky Mountains into the state of Washington. Our return trip took us on a more westerly route through Oregon, California, across Arizona and New Mexico, and back into Texas. Palo Duro Canyon is a canyon system of the Caprock Escarpment located in the Texas Panhandle near the cities of Amarillo and Canyon. One minute we were driving along flat panhandle roads, and then we came upon this giant crack in the earth. It is roughly 120 miles long and has an average width of 6 miles, reaches a width of 20 miles at places. Its depth is around 820 feet. The first European explorers to discover the canyon were members of the Coronado expedition, who visited the canyon in 1541. The painter Georgia O'Keeffe, who lived in nearby Amarillo and Canyon in the early 20th century, wrote of the Palo Duro, "It is a burning, seething cauldron filled with dramatic light and color." She made paintings of Palo Duro Canyon between 1916 and 1918 when she was an instructor and head of the art department at West Texas State Normal College. Next up is a 400-mile drive north by northwest up through the Texas Panhandle to the base of the Colorado Rockies. Located just outside of Colorado Springs, the Garden of the Gods red rock formations were created during a geological upheaval along a natural fault line millions of years ago. Archaeological evidence shows that prehistoric people visited the Garden of the Gods about 1330 BC and probably way before that. Today it is a favorite destination for tourists, hikers, and climbers. Visiting the park is a truly magical experience. Some of these sketches will eventually become oil paintings. Next up is Grand Teton National Park, located in northwestern Wyoming. The park includes the major peaks of the 40-mile-long Teton Range and was lastly occupied by the Shoshone natives. The park was established in 1929 by President Calvin Coolidge. The park gets its name from the 19th century French-speaking fur traders who named it Les Trois Tetons, or the Three Teats. Jackson Lake provides an exquisite reflecting pool for the Teton Range in the distance and is surrounded by over 1,000 drive-in campsites. Yellowstone National Park was our nation's first national park, having been signed into law by President Ulysses S. Grant in 1872. It is also widely held to be the first national park in the world. The park is known for its wildlife and its many geothermal features, especially Old Faithful Geyser, which is the most popular. At least 22 people are known to have died from hot spring-related injuries, so you don't want to take a swim in these pools unless you like swimming in battery acid. Rivers and lakes cover 5% of the land area, with the largest body of water being Yellowstone Lake. Yellowstone Lake is up to 400 feet deep and has 110 miles of shoreline. At an elevation of 7,733 feet, Yellowstone Lake is the largest high-elevation lake in North America. Forests comprise 80% of the land area of the park. Most of the rest is grassland. Although most of the park is in Wyoming, small parts are in Montana and Idaho. The natives seem to be unfettered by us tourists. The small town of Gardiner, Montana lies at Yellowstone's north entrance. Besides a few small shops and restaurants, the town's main feature is the Roosevelt Arch, which was constructed in 1903. President Theodore Roosevelt happened to be visiting the area at the time and laid the cornerstone, thus the name Roosevelt Arch. We can attest to the fine food served at Rosie's Bistro, which is operated by a nice Russian family. Our next overnight stop was at Beaver Hill State Park in Montana. This small, serene park is nestled into a bend of the Clark Fork River. When we are RVing, we pretty much adhere to the 330 rule. We drive no more than 330 miles per day, and we arrive at our overnight campground by 3:30 in the afternoon, assuring us a spot even if we did not make reservations. The next stop in our way to Seattle is Potholes State Park, located in eastern Washington state. A series of Ice Age flood-carved depressions in the earth combined with the dynamics of the O'Sullivan Dam created hundreds of tiny islands surrounded by pothole lakes. The terrain around the park in eastern Washington is mostly arid desert except for this beautiful lake. At the end of the day, we were treated to a fiery Washington sunset. The area is surrounded by orchards of all types. After almost a week of travel, we finally arrive in Seattle and park the Bob in front of my brother's house, which is actually located in Port Orchard. The view from his home is towards Seattle, with Blake Island Marine State Park being about a mile away. My sister-in-law Ulrika nurtures flowers on her back porch, which later became the subject of one of Monica's oil paintings. Our first order was to take the ferry across Puget Sound into Seattle for a day of exploration and sightseeing. We started out at Pike Place, which is a large outdoor market. Despite Seattle's current booming economy in recent years, the term Skid Row was derived from skidding timber down Yesler Way to Henry Yesler's sawmill located at the bottom of the hill. I'm not too certain about this thing of tossing fish at the seafood market, but it does seem to attract a lot of attention. We picked up some really great fresh seafood for dinner, and they also have excellent fresh produce. The next day, we visited the Naval Museum in nearby Bremerton, where these waterfall sculptures erupt every so often. This little ferry is over 100 years old and is the oldest operating ferry in the state. Heading out of Seattle, after our visit with my brother and sister-in-law, we passed the Naval Shipyard, which had 3 aircraft carriers at the docks. Next stop is Hurricane Ridge, which is situated deep within the Olympic National Forest and is aptly named because of the intense gale force winds that frequent the mountainous area. The area gets over 400 inches of snow per year. These views into the mountains are truly spectacular. Driving further west, we encountered pristine Lake Crescent. The lake was formed when glaciers carved out deep valleys during the last ice age. The lake is almost 600 feet deep, and its lack of nitrogen keeps algae from growing, thus keeping the water crystal clear. Bogachiel State Park was one of those unplanned stops along the way where we just got weary of driving and needed a spot to overnight. Bogachil is in the Hoh rainforest in the Olympic National Park and is one of the world's iconic forests, known for its vibrant greens, curtains of moss, and dense old-growth canopy. Leaving Bogachil, we headed south down the 101 along the coast of Washington. Reaching the end of the state of Washington, we crossed the Columbia River into Astoria, Oregon. After a couple of days of roughing it, we were ready for some good seafood and stopped at Moe's overlooking the river. Apparently, they are most known for their excellent clam chowder. The Depot Bay area was our first taste of the truly rugged Oregon coast. We spotted a single lonely elk wading in the tidal pool, then encountered miles of oyster beds, which can be plainly seen at low tide. The 101 meanders along the coast and up and down hills, providing spectacular views. As you might have guessed, I was quite enamored by this rugged inlet with the really cool play of light shining through the pine trees. Back on the 101, our next stop is Newport, Oregon, where we decide to visit the impressive Rogue Brewery for a bite to eat and a beer flight tasting. The brewery overlooks the Yaquina River and a large yacht harbor. Next up is Haystack Rock, situated along the coast just south of the town of Cannon Beach. This distinctive rock, jutting out of the Pacific Ocean, was formed by lava flows around 15 million years ago and famously appears in several Hollywood movies. Driving further south along the 101, we came upon Cape Lookout State Park, which is popular among beachcombers. While we were quite happy meandering down the beautiful Oregon coast along the 101, the days on the road were starting to take their toll on us, and we decided that we really needed to get to Yosemite, so we headed inland where we could make much better time on the interstates. On our last night camping on the Oregon coast, we were treated to a spectacular Pacific sunset. Next up was a very long drive from Oregon to Yosemite National Park. When I was a photography student in college, we always referred to Ansel as Angel Adams. Everywhere you looked, we could see the work of Angel. I was expecting a vast wilderness experience, but was somewhat surprised by all the crowds of people. Yosemite National Park is located in the western Sierra Nevada of Central California and is internationally recognized for its granite cliffs, waterfalls, clear streams, giant sequoia groves, lakes, mountains, meadows, glaciers, and biological diversity. Almost 95% of the park is designated wilderness. About 4 million people visit Yosemite each year, and most spend the majority of their time in the 7 square miles of Yosemite Valley. Of course, the view of Half Dome was one of my favorites, but the Merced River and Angel Falls were also very cool. Wow, it's a long way home as we set out south through the California desert to Barstow, then over to Kingman, Arizona, and on to Flagstaff, Gallup, and Albuquerque, New Mexico, then Lubbock and down into central Texas. After 3 weeks on the road, the last 3 days seemed to drag on forever, but we finally made it home. We hope you enjoyed this short summary of our Western trip and hope that you will give it a thumbs up and perhaps even subscribe to this channel as we plan to do more in the future. And please visit our website at monicaandjack.com where you can even purchase some of our art.